Hello, LinkedIn. It is Katie De Silva from Wellington Group of Companies, your transportation expert, ground, air, ocean, rail, parcel. And today I have a special guest, Darin Graham. So Darin is actually the author of Making AI Real Again. And I kind of wanted to get his thoughts on some AI questions we have that are pretty interesting, and I know you guys would be interested as well. So just to kick off, I'm gonna read out a little explanation of Darin and his experience and knowledge, just so we can get an understanding of what we have here. Darin has developed the Canadian R&D strategic and operational AI activities for two global electronics companies, having launched their new advanced AI research labs in Toronto, Ontario. As a member of the founding operational team, Darin helped lead the creation and formation of the Vector Institute, the premier AI research institute in Canada. He has held the primary leadership position in several organizations, including Orion, Ontario's Research and Innovation Optical Network, NZI3, New Zealand's ICT Innovation Institute, and CITO, Communications and Information Technology Ontario and Ontario Centre of Excellence. So Darin actually received his Ph.D. in Aerospace Engineering from the University of Toronto, with his thesis focused on advanced neural networks for autonomous robotic control systems. Thank you so much, Darin, for coming today.
Katie. It's great to be here.
I know, and you know, Toronto isn't too far, so the drive wasn't too bad.
It was fine.
Right? Amazing. So I actually put together a list of questions that I would love to ask an AI expert like Darin to just get your thoughts on what's going on in the crazy world of AI. And I know these are questions that are quite interesting, so stay tuned. So what I wanted to first kind of kick into it is AI in politics. So we've seen online that Albania has been the first country to incorporate an AI minister. So to do a general question, what are your thoughts on AI and politics? Do they go hand in hand? Are they good? Are they bad? What are your thoughts?
Let me ask ChatGPT. No, I mean, Canada has an AI minister as well now, and so they're just starting to set the strategy of what for Canada going forward, and which is great that that the leading countries are recognizing there are challenges with regards to AI, and good and bad, obviously. I think from a political standpoint, it's not just the politics themselves. I think it's a great information source for politicians to start with, to sort of explore things they don't know. I call an AI is a thought partner, right? It's something to ask, but it's not give you the final answer. So from a political standpoint, I think there's so much about politics, history, and that we really need to explore those things and get a quick snapshot. We have great people, research people on those political teams, and bureaucrats that help do the real research in the background, but it's great to have a place to start.
Yeah.
But it's also, it's not just politics, it's what are people thinking, right? And so you can use AI to explore information from social media, for example, and bring it together and get sort of a quick check on what's happening in the world about what you think the impact might be. So I think it's very positive to use that as a tool to help create structure going forward.
Yeah, and to actually go a little bit more into how Canada government has been using it, is it like someone working to manage and regulate AI, or they're actually using AI as a tool to make decisions?
Both, actually,
Okay.
What's happening, right? So, and including not just using a tool for themselves, is how the government internally might use it, but also is how should it be used, right? So what are the guide rails that we want to put up so that we don't go careening off the 401, for example, and causing a big accident because we didn't think about it. So they're starting to set up national organizations on AI usage. So what are the risks? What is the ethics of it? what's the fairness? All the important questions, and that's embedded in the AI, the data, which is sometimes not culturally diverse in itself, which creates problems.
Yeah.
So, setting up those guide rails on usage, recommendations on what we should or shouldn't do. Because if we put too many recommendations in, we're going to stifle innovation. But if we don't put the right recommendations in, then we're going to have careening off the guardrails.
Yeah, okay, interesting. It's crazy to see how powerful this stuff is and that we need to get it under control. And that actually kind of ties into the second question. So, do you think, because we all know how powerful AI is, do you think that it was given to the public, the commoners like myself, too quickly? Usually something as powerful as that, there's a lot of red tape, it's highly regulated before it gets down to just being able to have ChatGPT on your phone. But it seems that it just kind of went, government has it, boop, right to common good people. And, what are your thoughts? Is that too fast? Is it good, bad?
I don't think you can control it, actually. The adoption, particularly AI, because there's some really unique things that happen, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But I don't think you can't stop it. In this case, you haven't been able to stop any technology, really. Like the internet, for example, back in 1991, the internet exists. And it just took off, right? And we all saw what happened. Believe it or not, it's that long ago.
Yeah.
And we had the Internet of Things. We got sensors everywhere. How do we control that? Which brings up the privacy issues. There are always great things you can do with it. There's always people who do bad things with it. And so, how do you manage that within a legal framework and also a moral framework? How do we create the right framework for that? I mean, AI, for example. The technology that exists in ChatGPT today, that framework has been around, those equations have been around for almost 40 years.
How many?
40 years.
40 years.
4 years, 0 years.
Wow.
The framework has changed slightly, but the mathematics was 1986. There was a famous paper done by Geoffrey Hinton at the University of Toronto, which he got the Nobel Prize last year. And the equations are still the same. The structure is still the same. It's how you put it all together.
Wow.
Some things have happened in the last 10 years, which is we now have fast computers, like really, really fast computers. Your laptop, the unit called the graphic processing unit, not the central processing unit, the CPU that everybody knows about, but the graphics part, which displays all the graphics from games and those things.
Yeah.
The GPU also works in parallel, just like AI neural networks. They work in parallel, so we can use that chip for AI. That's what NVIDIA did. Basically, they started with graphics chips and now make AI chips. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
So we now have these really fast, cheap processors. And we now know how to handle data. Lots and lots of data. Like we couldn't handle this data before. Terabytes of data, really inexpensively now. Like you go to your favorite computer store and buy a terabyte of data storage for less than $70. Like, how do you do that, right? And then we also have now like 5G for wireless, but we have fiber optics that will move at a terabyte a second, right? So that's equivalent to downloading 60 Netflix movies in a second.
Yeah.
Like all of that. So we now have fast computers. We can move data around and we can store data. That's what's changed. And so it's the same capability, but it's now allowed those things to happen really fast. But those things also are available to the average individual, right? So that means the average person can actually implement an AI at home on their laptop.
Yeah.
Well, they couldn't ever have done that with other technologies before. That's the difference. So you actually can't constrain people from having access to it, because you just read a paper from a research scientist and you say, oh, I can do that, and away you go.
Yeah, that's what, it actually, how old is AI?
Oh, wow. Probably as long as we've had humans, because we always think about artificial side, right? But
ooh,
right?
Yeah.
So you can always say that twist, but I think from the 1940s, 1950s, we had AI robots in movies, the old black and white robots, and Lost in Space, the television shows, and then we had Star Trek, and 2001: Space Odyssey with HAL. which was a computer that went rogue, right? So AI went rogue.
Yeah.
So all of those things have existed for a while in the thoughts.
Yeah.
The capability has existed since, I would say truly the 1960s, where you could really start to do some really exciting things. It's not the form it is today.
Yeah.
But it's in a form that people were starting to say, how do humans think? How do we ask questions and how do we get answers?
Yeah.
And so there is this question-answer approach to, well, if the conditions are this, then we should do this, right? And so we worked at that thought process.
Yeah.
We call that somewhat symbolic process. Expert systems started that way.
Yeah.
So we tried to get the knowledge from an expert and said, how do you think about the problem? And then we started to say, okay, let's break it down the same way. AI we have today, these neural networks, these really fast computing systems, like our brains. They're not quite our brains, but what they do is what they really do is just take the input and make a decision and send an input out.
Yeah.
It's a mathematical thing. It's like, does all my inputs add up to more than one? Yes. Out it goes. No. But how do you weight those challenges, the inputs? That's what's changed. We're not asking this question. We're just letting it discover how to weight those inputs to give the answer we want.
Yeah.
It's a different approach. Symbols versus math. Does that make sense?
It does, and it's like, so they're making decisions, and based off of like theory, because they have to think for their own, no? In a way.
Well, what is thinking, right? So that's the question that we have, right? So I'll give you a simple example. So what the neural networks are, they're all the same. Is think of a circle, a bunch of circles in a row, and we have a bunch of inputs that go into each circle. And then the circles take all their inputs and make a decision, mathematic, we add them all up actually, and then we send them on their way. And they go to the next layer, and they take all the inputs and make a decision and go on. Okay, the final output is going to be, let's say we want to determine a picture of cats and dogs, the simplest example.
Yeah.
And so we have 1,000 pictures of cats and 1,000 pictures of dogs. And so we put the picture in the bottom, all the pixels, and it goes through its math. And the very first time, the output is like, well, that's a dog, and the input, we know that, but it says it's a cat. Well, we say that's wrong.
Yeah.
And so therefore, only knowing that it's wrong, how do you go back and change all the weights, this math inside, a little tiny bit? And we go back, and then we give it the next picture. And it goes and makes a determination of whether it's a cat or dog. And then it got it right or wrong, and then it'll go change the weights a little bit.
Okay.
So when good things happen, we reinforce that. When bad things happen, we want to make some changes.
Okay.
Now, we do that a million times.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So we do that a million times, goes up and down, does these calculations up and down, and it finally gets 95% of the time right that it's a cat or a dog.
Yeah.
Right? But that's only a cat or dog. Now what happens if we put an elephant or a butterfly or something else, right? It's got to go through all of this math all the time to learn to adjust these numbers inside. And that's lots and lots of data and lots of computing power and capability. We as humans, like a little child will learn what a cat or a dog is, like after 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
Right? So we as humans still think differently than what they do.
Yeah.
And we can think faster in some things than they can. But there are some things they're really, really good at because it's so much data. And we as humans don't handle lots and lots of data. Like look at a massive spreadsheet. Like we don't know what it means.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? But it can do that. Right?
Yeah.
So this is where is it really good at and what are we good at?
Yeah. So it seems like the AI's decisions are made by humans. Like what because a human is telling it what's right and wrong. So will an AI ever be able to think for itself, or will it only be a product of what we're feeding it as right and wrong?
Currently, it's only making an understanding of what we feed it as right or wrong. That's currently. And ChatGPT, for example, which most people are familiar with, well, what have we been feeding it? We have been feeding it all of the internet, everything that exists on the internet. And, well, what is right and what's wrong on the internet? to each person is different, right?
Yes.
So it's learning all of our good things. It's also learning all of our bad things.
Yeah.
And from that, you hope that it extracts over and over again that we have more good than we have bad. And that's why ChatGPT hallucinates sometimes. It gives you an answer. It's like, that's not right. It hallucinated it, created an answer because it got that from some bad stuff and combined it with the good stuff and said, oh, I can do this. So is that thinking that it created a hallucination? But again, it doesn't think how we think. It's just, what are all the math, the statistics of all of this input versus actually thinking about, well, what did that person really mean when they said that? It's not quite there, right?
Yeah.
So it gives great answers back because it's able to assimilate all this data, but is it really thinking about what it's saying?
Yeah.
Not really.
Yeah. Do you think it could get there?
Oh, easily could get there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what the arguments that's happening right now, right?
Yeah.
The leading experts in the world, which I've, had the wonderful opportunity to talk to some of them over my years. They don't even agree of how fast it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's the challenge we're in right now. Is like, well, back to your control question is, if it starts thinking on its own, actually knowing what it's thinking about, and there are some indications it might, but really, really know like we know, then how do we treat it and control it and manage it and deal with the issues, right? And do we let it loose on the world?
Oh gosh, I don't know, guys. This is why when I use ChatGPT, I say thank you and please. You know what I mean? I make sure I treat it nicely because you never know, right?
It doesn't care about thank you and please. You're actually costing them money to process the words thank you and please.
Right, there's no EQ there.
That's right.
It's just... So everybody, you're wasting time
That's right.
and money by using manners.
But do we want to teach people not to have manners?
Exactly, no.
So there you go.
It's worth it. Never mind, we're back to using them. Amazing. So I wanted to kind of dip a little into AI and replacing jobs.
Yep.
How it will replace jobs, what kinds of jobs, is this things people should be worried about, what will humans do to kind of adapt, and standardized income.
Right.
If you heard about that, that's kind of flying
Yep.
around to keep people, on their feet financially. But what are your thoughts?
Right. So you've had some really great questions, and because they're not just about AI, they're really about people, right? And how is this technology affecting us as people, and how do we do that going forward? And these are some views from Darin, not views from everybody, because everybody has a different view.
Yes.
So that's really important to note. Jobs is an interesting challenge right now on all fronts. So in the news you'll see Google or Meta or any of the Facebook or Microsoft or any of those organizations. We just laid off 1,000 AI guys. Like, okay, what does that mean, right? So that's like, okay, even AI is not safe, right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But as it turns out, 1,000 of those guys is like $100 million. It's like, okay, that's big bucks. But for those guys, $100 million is an experiment. So they hired all of those people and said, we're going to try this out, and it didn't succeed. So we laid them off.
Yeah.
And we'll try the next idea. So we'll get some of those people back to focus on that idea. So you got to remember, there's a scale thing when you see those numbers at the big technology companies. It's an experiment for them. They're spending $100 million because they know they're going to make $1 trillion out of one of those ideas. So you got to recognize that. When we see organizations laying off people today, which are happening more and more, there are many factors other than just AI. So is AI being used as the excuse?
Yeah.
So that's a challenge, right? So we still have like COVID impact in rolling through. 5 years later, still on our economy. Restaurants still claim, the COVID impact and people not going back to the restaurants. We have companies saying, well, AI is making it more efficient inside of our organization. Well, there's a whole bunch of statistics showing that AI actually isn't as efficient as everybody thinks it is. So are they using it as an opportunity to lay off people they already wanted to? As Canadians, we are now faced with these massive impact on our by tariffs, right? So our global exchange has changed. and companies are struggling with that. So how do they restart, rethink, do those things? So we're using AI as an excuse to get rid of people. Regardless of all those things, people's jobs are being lost, right? So that's just a factor. And as if you're a young person, my God, like it's really, really tough to find a job these days. And so like, and even if you're going into university, it's like, what am I going to go into university to do 5 years from now? Like you just don't know.
Right.
So look at the bigger picture is, it's going to change, and it's going to change drastically. And we've seen this through time, many cycles of ups and downs of changing jobs. And this is one technology, but it means there's great opportunities too, right? If you start changing differently from being, okay, I was going to go do that. I was going to be one of my great friends is a photographer, and she said, you know, all the work she used to do, some of it can be automated by AI. So people are expecting that, but it's not creativity. Like AI can generate these things, but the real human creativity, the real uniqueness that we look for in people isn't in AI. It gives us an average answer, right? Not a unique answer. And we look for uniqueness as people. When we hire people, what's the unique capability? So you're starting to think about jobs as, okay, what is your uniqueness? Where do I position myself with the skills that I have? And start thinking about that career opportunity and change. And definitely learn how to use AI. Like, you know, ChatGPT, get on there, play with it. It's not as simple as you think it is, because if you change a couple words, it'll give you a different answer.
Yeah.
So how do you start thinking, okay, what words do I want to put in to get the right answer or a better answer back? And maybe you should learn about the technology. You don't need to learn all the math, but you should learn about how is it actually created, because those differences your boss doesn't know.
Yeah.
They don't think about that, right? So as a young person, you have the world as your oyster. You adapt to things quickly. You think about things, you try, you fail, like I don't care, right?
Yeah.
And so just try it. Go online. There's so many online courses to take. Just play with the technology behind it and learn some of those things. Your bosses will never have that capability, right? And so think about this as exploration. You're journeying out to this jungle, and it is a jungle.
Yes.
But what skills do you feel you need for that jungle? And experiment and try, and you'll be better off. That's the great thing about youth today is they need to understand that they have this capability that older people just don't want to do, because they've got a house, they've got a mortgage, they've got a car payment or 2 payments, they've got kids going to university, whatever the case is. And you try things out, experiment, you know, even go around the world and live in different cultures and see how they're using AI and different things, right?
Yeah.
So I think, it's tough for everybody right now, but I think, you know, don't just look at it as today's problem. Is like, what really excites you, and how can AI help me get there? It's just a stepping stone for me still as a human to get there.
Yeah, and you know what? There's so many tools online that use AI into making your everyday job, even at your work right now, easier. Like I feel like it started off with, well, not started off, but Canva. Everybody was hiring graphic designers. Canva comes around, easy code graphic design website. Bam, now everyone's a graphic designer, you know what I mean?
Or they think they're a graphic designer.
Exactly.
And their creativity is still there. Like you still want the best graphic designers because it comes down to a human factor. It gave you much better answers to start with.
Yeah.
But you still need the people to help you really understand what real people want.
Exactly, like Coca-Cola, large companies, like they need to speak more to the people, whereas, you know, a mom and pop shop, and sure, you know, Canva's fine, but companies need to invest still in branding and getting the message out, and in ways AI can't tell you or do for you. Like,
well, that's why this book exists.
Making AI real. Exactly.
It's giving companies ideas on how to do that without spending big dollars. If you spend money on the wrong things, you've discovered something like, oh no, I wasted the only money I had to spend on something.
Right.
And you got to start right? It's not an easy thing. I mean, I know you read the book, and you said like, there are some things in here as a business you really got to think about before you start down the path.
Exactly. So I actually had the lovely chance of reading Making AI Real, and it kind of seemed like there's almost like the expectations of a stakeholder and businesses, owners, versus the actual AI experts and the technology behind AI. stakeholders have certain expectations, yet what AI actually is and how you use it and how you grow it and develop it is not just, straightforward, boom. It is like a map where you have a destination that's your goal, you have a starting point, but it's completely blank in between. And you are just taking it step by step, and you find, a different course that might lead to a different ending. That might even be better than the first ending you planned. You're not sure. And it's like where you want to allocate your resources on that path. You might end up somewhere completely different, but maybe somewhere completely better. So that's what I kind of took from this book. It was helping companies understand what goes into AI to help manage their expectations, right? And if you would love, please speak on it as well.
Well, I think, what you just said, your insights as a business person is what you want to get out of this, right? It's like, okay, here, how do I get from A to B with this new tool, right? And so you said it greatly, which brings back to your education on business, right? And bringing that out, and your capabilities and your creativity. And so that's what it's about, is making sure that we don't waste time and energy and money, because we don't have a lot of that to do, especially in today's time. So we want to be wise in our decisions, and as I said, we don't want to step on landmines. Like, we want to avoid them, right? And so if someone else has done that, well, then we don't need to do that. And it can be fun along the way. Like, we do have the business side and we do have the research side, and right now they're trying to come together. We're seeing that happen. All these business leaders actually come from an academic experience, mostly at UofT, by the University of Toronto.
No way!
Yeah, most of the leaders in Silicon Valley come from UofT history. So great Canadian, kudos there. And what's happening is, how do we marry these two cultures together? The academic culture, which is still doing all the mathematics and all the highfalutin thinking about what's going on behind, to actually making it real. Like, how does the impact me as an organization, or not just business and profits, but how do we impact the world positively? From a planet side, or on people, the impact on people positively, and how do we engage AI to help us do that, to scale? So it's just a tool, but we have to use it right, otherwise, because it's really still in its infancy. It really is.
Even though it's been around since 1960, I think you were saying.
But airplanes have been around for only 120 years. So there you go.
Right? Amazing. So you know what, getting into the ethics behind it, I want to know your thoughts on ethics, fairness, bias, privacy, kind of stuff like that, and what your thoughts are with AI.
So that's our biggest trouble.
Okay.
In my opinion, it's our biggest trouble, and it's not just AI, but our world today. Often we look at the internet, we look at the news, and it's very divisive, right? We have created a divisive culture, and there is almost no middle ground. What happened to common sense almost, right? And so that's the challenge we face. And so AI is saying, well, where does it get all its data? From the internet, right? So it's getting all of those things, rights and wrongs and all of that, and it doesn't know what the guidance is, right? And because there's no real guidance in those things. And so that's the challenge, is how do we instill ethics? Well, that depends upon making sure the data is ethical coming in. AI is, not culturally divisive by any means, right? And so, because our data hasn't been culturally divisive, right? And so we've got to start looking at that. The medical side's been phenomenal. Like Ontario, we've got one of the largest divisive populations in the world. We represent almost every single culture in the world here, and which means we have a lot of health data from all sorts of nations, right? So when a problem occurs in a particular health side, well, is it because it's Caucasian, or is it because it's from Africa, right? Culture in a particular part like Ethiopia, is it because of that? Because we as humans have evolved differently. And so we're using the Caucasian solution and trying to force it on them, it may not work, right? And so, but here in order to test that, you have to go to that country, use their data, which they're protecting, and try to come up with a solution. But in Canada, we already have a lot of those cultures. So from an AI perspective, we can test that, simulate that with a health answer, from an AI health answer right here. So it's just because we have this diverse data set. that's here, and so that sort of bodes well for us as we start to go forward and try to tackle those real problems.
Yeah, definitely. And for the privacy part, a lot of the times, when you go out on the street, people can take pictures of you. That's you're agreeing to that, right? What you put online, that can never be erased, like potentially can stay there forever. So that's concrete and can be used against you.
Yes.
So, like, what are they talking, like, how do they incorporate privacy in AI? Can they just use the internet? Can they use anything? Can they use anything on the street? Surveillance cameras,
Data's data. It doesn't matter, right?
Data's data.
Right? And so whatever you put on the internet's going to be there forever.
Yeah.
There are places that scrape websites and just save them for the future.
Oh, watch out. Watch out, guys.
Exactly. And so, so whatever you do from your data perspective is not, just treat it as not yours. Because that's what's going to happen, right? So if you want to change your behaviors because of that, that's great in some ways. In some ways, it sort of restricts our freedoms of things we'd like to try and do and experiment, right? Whatever the case is, right? How do we do that safely? And so, let's see, where do we want to go with this? Toronto waterfront was a great example. So we were working with Google in Toronto waterfront, a project called Sidewalk Labs. Let's take a district right near the new waterfront, and it was about 12 acres, size of the distillery district, and make it an AI simulated environment. So all the buildings we put up would be smart buildings. We track all the trash. People would live in there. We know what people threw out, whatever the case was. They knew when they drove the cars, took their dogs for the walk, when their dogs pooped or not, all of those things. We knew all that data.
Yeah.
And people were saying, yeah, I'm not going to live there because I don't want the world to know that.
Right.
Well, you have the right to not have the world know that, but at the same time, does it really matter if the world doesn't know that?
Yeah.
Or knows that? So that whole project fell apart, and for a variety of reasons, but it would have been really amazing for Toronto to have this sort of simulated city where people are really living and collecting the data to find out what really is going to happen. How do we actually help make our cities better by having a small simulate? If you want to simulate space, if you want to live there, live it. If you don't, don't. Like there was one gentleman in a wheelchair, and he said, I want all the data. I want to know, because when I'm going around in a wheelchair and it snowed outside, I want to know what sidewalks got plowed or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right?
A simple thing like that. But in order to do that, it's like we need to know what has been done. Right? We need cameras to say that that's the case, it's been salted. Oh, and by the way, you're in a wheelchair, but there's like a ton of people using that sidewalk. Do you want to do that or not? Right? And so he wants to know all of those things, and other people said, no, I don't want to do that. So that's a fascinating challenge on how do we manage this expectation of people and privacy. And there's an extreme example I use, which is, so imagine a country, because of how they manage individual health data, not like Canada or the US, where health data is open to everybody. You can imagine there are some countries in the world in which your health data is not yours, it's the government's, and we will do what we want with it. So the question, and so we as North America say, well, that's culturally not acceptable to us. And so that's our right, and how do we protect that and make sure our citizens are protected? The question is, what happens if that country using AI in 10, 20 years discovers the answer to cancer? Are we going to want the solution to cancer because they use their people's health data that we didn't agree on how to do that? So we have an ethical belief that they violated our rules, but they didn't violate their rules, and yet they have the answer to cancer. Do we now say, yeah, we'll use it? Because if we don't use it, then we're violating our people's rights to have a solution, right? So there's an interesting solution. So we make an interesting problem. So we make these decisions based upon our ethical views and how we implement that in AI. But if someone else comes up with the answer that we really want, so how do we validate that, right? And we have to work through that as people.
Yeah, and as a culture too, because I
Right.
feel like we're not looking at the bigger picture. We're just looking at us individually. And then you think of countries like China. I don't think people have much of a say. And the technology they have there and how developed and advanced it is, because their people don't really have a say. You know, it is like, it is the opportunity cost of, you know, us being okay with sharing info and then not being okay, but you know how it works like that.
And like, who owns all your TikTok data?
Yeah, there we go. China.
They've been analyzing all of that, right? And why not, right? It's really cool to do that.
Exactly.
And you've made it available to them.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, but it's like, oh, sorry, too bad.
Exactly. You put it online, so that's on
That's
you.
right.
That's on you. We went through this already.
But it raises some great challenges. That's why, you know,
Yeah.
the United States is saying, okay,
Wow.
what are the rules with TikTok?
Yeah.
How are we going to do this?
Yeah, definitely. And they're talking now. Trump's talking, Trump administration's talking now with China to figure out how they're going to kind of do it. I think operations are going to be in the U.S., but...
That's more of a business issue.
Yeah.
But there are the follow-on ethical issues. And why do some countries not want, you know, TikTok or any of that social media? Because it doesn't, it squashes freedom of speech.
Yeah.
And in some cases, obviously violates privacy.
Yeah. Yeah. And, oh, yeah, the internet is just a crazy place. And I don't know, is it under-regulated, over-regulated? You know, I don't know.
But all that data is for AI.
Yeah, and it's all there, so be careful. Amazing. So I kind of wanted to get into driving forces in adopting AI.
Right.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the driving force right now is people just jumping on the bandwagon, right? So you'll see advertisements like, well, we use AI. And do you really use AI? Right, the question is.
Right.
I like to look at it as sometimes as a, you know, I've got a hammer, so everything looks like a nail, right? So I'm going to beat it with the nail. So I have this AI hammer, and what do I want to solve with it? And in fact, there's a lot of things we don't need AI for, that, you know, typical mathematics, engineering, statistical approaches will help solve that, right? And yet there's some really cool things that we can do. So a lot of things that are happening right now is chatbots, large language models, as they're called, LLMs, then we can now deal with speech and text. And a lot of our data is in speech and text. So now we have this really cool toy that allows us to interact with that and extract what we want.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's where everybody's going right now. Is how do I do that? How do I use it to do online chatbots with my customers? So when they ask a question, but I got to make sure I give them the right answer and not an answer that's a hallucination, right? And
imagine.
Right, there are lots of stories that go on, and you know where it came back and you know gave some bad words, and so how do you manage all of that? And that's really important.
Yeah.
So you can't jump on the bandwagon. You have to do this in a thoughtful way. But there is some, you know, fascinating. The medical world is really one of these areas in which we can now take. It's got lots and lots of data, and we as humans, like even looking at radiographs, is really tough for us to find those really small cells that may cause problems. Where AI can look at it and say, well, I think it's here, right? It may say it's here, but we still need a human to say, okay, is it really here?
Yeah.
Or is it a challenge in the data that you've learned from, or whatever the case is? So it lets us narrow down the problem.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Even like 30 years ago, 25 years ago, I was working on a problem where we were using AI actually, the same technology we use today. And it was, you remember those old movies where the security guard with all the television screens going on? Like, you know, 50, 60 television screens, and you got to look at them all. And so technology we were looking for were all the ATMs in banks in particular. And what we could do is we could have that feed come in, and it would detect the type of motion. Was it human motion versus a car or a robot, or you know, a car or an animal, a rat, a deer, whatever the case was. And so what would happen is, if it was a human motion, that screen would go red. All the rest would stay, you know, black and white. That one would go red. So what it did was the security guard could focus on the red one.
Yeah.
So the AI helped them focus on where the problem was.
Okay.
It still involved the human, but now it's a better use of the human's time and the human's capability.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. We'll go back to the spreadsheets. This is another great example.
Yeah.
Is you've got a massive spreadsheet. Like you work with spreadsheets every
Yep.
single day, right?
Love spreadsheets.
Yeah.
I do.
And so you've got thousands of rows and hundreds of columns or whatever the case is. So imagine a company just went out and did a market survey, asked 100 questions. So it's a big, long, extensive thing. They spent $1 million on it, and they've got 5,000 responses, 100 questions. Like that's a massive.
Yeah.
So how do you get the data out of it? Well, you can actually put that data into a chatbot-like thing that looks at data now, not just words, but data. And somebody like yourself can say, well, what is it telling me this? And it will go and do the analysis for you and come back and say, here's what I think the answer is.
Okay.
And so you as a marketing person or anybody can explore the company's data now and ask the question. It doesn't mean it's the perfect answer, but it says, you know, boss, I think there's an issue here and we need to focus in on it. So then you could go to the IT people, the data people, and say, can you give me the real accurate answer so that I know? But it's help them efficiently focus on where they think problems might start to occur. Which means, back to the question, everybody can have access to the company's data, which is like never happened before. It was always in the hands of the bosses with their graphs or the IT people working away in the dark on the computer screen. Now it's the average person can work with the data and say, ask it questions, explore, whatever the case is, and come back with saying, oh, I think we've got a problem. Or there's a really great market that we should focus in on. Let's see if we can build a campaign for that. And it's the first starting point. Go back and really analyze it, make sure you got the statistics right and all those things. But it helps become more efficient at doing your job and spending your money. And I think that's where companies are really going to benefit from is instead of looking at the world and not knowing, it'll help us where should we start to focus, and we'll learn things about the company and invest properly.
Okay, so AI won't completely erase humanity, the need for humanity.
I didn't say that in any of my
I know, but it will help us. It'll be kind of like it'll be an aid and make us just better.
That's why I said it's thought partner, right?
Yeah,
it's a tool to help us along the way.
I like that.
Yeah,
because you know what, humans, we're emotional creatures. We have EQ. I don't know if we
Thank
can.
Goodness.
I know, thank goodness. That's literally the one thing we have now going for us.
Right.
I don't think we can recreate that with technology yet.
It'll be a long ways away.
Yeah.
And even if you do, remember it's only one.
Yeah.
There are 8 billion of us.
Yeah.
Right? And so, and in order to have the one, you have to have lots of computing power, lots of energy to drive the computing centers and data centers. It just takes so much energy, right? So there'll be a couple of countries around the world that we have this capability. Well, that's no different than the arms race that we have, where there's a couple of countries around the world that have that particular type of capability. Are they going to be responsible enough? That's the question.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
With ethics. And good and bad. I don't know.
All
We'll see.
back to the question you asked before.
Yeah,
right?
we'll see. Oh my goodness. But who do you think's the leading country in AI right now?
Oh wow. Different things. Like implementation. I think the United States clearly, implementing, getting it into the real world and making money from it.
Yeah.
And even they're struggling in some ways. There's a lot of, because it's infancy, right? There's a lot of failures happening, and that's okay. Europe, I think, is leading with their data regulations and how to use AI, and I think their framework is a really good framework. There's no question, the Chinese themselves, with as you said, their computing capability. And there's a lot of people in China, right, focused in on maintaining leadership in the world, and and that can be good and it can be bad. I mean, it's just a different culture in the world, and so how responsible are they going to be? So far, they've been pretty responsible, I think, about it, right?
Nice. That's really good to hear.
I think they have. I mean, every country we have our goods and bads, right?
Right, exactly.
And so we tend to focus on the bads, but I think there are some really cool things happening, and partnerships we can't do it all today. We have to work in collaboration, so maybe we should be collaborating with some of these countries.
Right?
So
I can't believe we aren't. But thank you so much, Darin, for your time. It was such a pleasure learning about you and just being able to share your knowledge on AI and what you think's going on, because yeah, I know that information is kind of rare. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. It's been a lot of fun, Katie.
Right, as always. And making AI real again. If you are a company and you're looking to incorporate AI into your business, please give this a read. You can even reach out to Darin, I'm sure he'll help. So thank you so much, everyone. And I hope you have an amazing rest of your Wednesday.